The night was colder than usual, the kind of chill that bites through even the thickest coat. Emily tightened her thin jacket around herself as she walked home from her late shift, her feet aching, her mind already calculating how long her last few dollars had to stretch before payday. That's when she saw him, huddled against the wall of a closed diner, knees pulled to his chest, clothes threadbare, his breath fogging in the air like fragile smoke. For a moment, Emily froze. She knew the feeling of hunger, of cold creeping into your bones, of pretending you're fine when you're not. She had been there too many times. Her instinct told her to keep walking. She had nothing to give, barely enough for herself. But as she looked closer, she noticed his hands trembling violently, his eyes dull with exhaustion. Something in her heart refused to let her pass by. Slowly, she opened her backpack and pulled out the one blanket she carried everywhere, a faded old thing she'd kept for nights when her apartment's heat cut out. Without a word, she draped it over his shoulders. His eyes lifted to hers, startled, as if he hadn't expected kindness from anyone. Emily gave a small, nervous smile and handed him a steaming cup of instant soup she had packed from home, her dinner, now his. "You'll freeze out here," she whispered, more to herself than to him. In that moment, Emily didn't feel poor at all. She felt human, and she knew he did too. The man sipped the soup slowly, his hands shaking less as warmth spread through him. Emily lingered awkwardly, shifting from one foot to the other. She hadn't planned on staying, she'd done her part, hadn't she? Yet the thought of leaving him out there gnawed at her. The streets were merciless, and she knew all too well what it felt like to have no one. "Do you have anywhere to go?" she finally asked, her voice hesitant. His eyes fell to the ground, shame shadowing his face. "No," he murmured. That single word pressed heavily against her chest. Emily's mind raced. Her apartment was hardly more than a shoebox, peeling paint, a rickety stove, rent overdue. She didn't even own a proper bed, just a mattress on the floor. She barely had space for herself, let alone a stranger. But looking at him, so tired, so utterly defeated, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "Come on," she said quietly, almost surprising herself. "You can stay at my place tonight. It's not much, but it's warm." His head jerked up, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "You'd do that for me?" Emily gave a faint shrug. No one deserves to freeze. The walk to her apartment was silent, broken only by the crunch of their footsteps on icy pavement. When they reached her tiny home, she laid out a pillow and blanket on the floor. He sat down, humbled beyond words, staring at this young woman who, though struggling herself, had opened her door and her heart. The days that followed were quiet but strangely comforting. Emily went about her routine, long shifts, quick meals, late nights, while the man, who introduced himself simply as Daniel, helped where he could. He washed dishes, swept the floor, even fixed the loose hinge on her cupboard. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried a weight, a thoughtfulness that surprised her. Emily never asked about his past. She didn't need to. What mattered was that he was human, deserving of dignity, and she treated him that way. She offered her half of everything: toast in the mornings, laughter at old sitcoms on her tiny TV, quiet conversations that stretched into the night. Slowly, Daniel's shoulders seemed to straighten, the despair in his eyes giving way to something gentler, something alive. Then one morning, Emily woke to the smell of fresh coffee. When she entered the kitchen, she froze. Daniel stood there, not in tattered clothes, but in a crisp suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was neatly combed, his posture tall, commanding. It was as though the man she had taken in had vanished overnight. Emily blinked in disbelief. "Daniel, what's going on?" He turned, a small, almost shy smile on his face. "I wasn't honest with you," he said softly. "I'm not homeless. I'm the CEO of a company. I wanted to disappear for a while, to understand what life was like beyond the glass towers, and no one cared, no one even looked at me, until you." Her breath caught. The man she had welcomed out of compassion was not who she thought he was at all. Daniel's words hung in the air, heavy with a truth Emily struggled to grasp. She stared at him, the polished suit, the calm authority radiating from him. It didn't match the man who had trembled on the sidewalk days ago. Her heart pounded. Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his eyes filled with a rawness that no suit could disguise. "Because no one ever sees me for me," he confessed. "People see the wealth, the power, the title. But you shared what little you had, without asking for anything. You gave me dignity when I had none. Emily, you showed me more humanity than I've felt in years." Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to protest, to say she hadn't done anything extraordinary. She was just surviving, just trying to be decent in a world that often wasn't. But he wasn't finished. His voice trembled as he continued. "I had grown cold in my world. Cynical. Surrounded by people who only cared for what I could give them. But your kindness, it broke something in me, in the best way. It reminded me that compassion is the greatest wealth of all. And I can't let your generosity end here." Her hands shook as he gently placed an envelope on the table. Papers, opportunities, a path to an education and a job she had never dared dream of. Not charity, but a chance. Emily pressed her palm over her mouth, overwhelmed. For the first time in so long, hope didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt real, alive, possible. Emily sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the envelope as though it might vanish if she blinked. Her chest was tight with emotion, gratitude, disbelief, fear of hoping too much. Slowly, she looked up at Daniel, who was watching her not with pride or superiority, but with the quiet reverence of someone whose life had been changed too. "I don't want to buy your kindness," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "I just want to honor it. You gave me shelter when you had nothing to spare. Let me give you a future." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't born of struggle. They were tears of release, of a weight lifting she hadn't even realized she carried. For years she had lived day by day, always afraid tomorrow would collapse around her. Now, for the first time, tomorrow looked bright. She didn't become wealthy overnight. Her apartment didn't magically transform into luxury, nor did her life become easy. But slowly, with Daniel's guidance and belief in her, doors opened, education, steady work, a chance to stand tall. And through it all, Daniel remained beside her, not as a savior, but as a friend who had been saved in his own way. Their story spread, neighbors, co-workers, strangers online. People whispered about the girl who gave everything she could, and the man who gave everything back. And the message was simple, timeless: true wealth is not found in money or power, but in the kindness we choose, even when we have little to give.